Hi, ninth grade.
Hello again.
Welcome back. It is now Thursday of remote learning. So we are going to finish the excerpt today, excerpt number 5. That will put us at the end of Clementine Rumaria's story. And then tomorrow you just have some independent reading. But Mr. Allen and I thought it would be a nice treat to record ourselves reading to you the same way that we would if we were in class. So if you would please open to excerpt number 5, which starts on the one that has the 20 on the top. I'll wait a couple seconds, or if you'd like to pause us for a moment, you can.
Oh, are they reading with their reading focus?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Great. So even though you don't have a writing assignment due for today, you should still be reading according to the reading focus that's posted in the slides for today.
So you might want to take a second and actually pause us again to just make sure that you are on the reading focus. It did probably change one last time. Okay, we're going to start. Ready? I was still a hard person to love. I wanted to be adored and admired, but not needed. I wanted to retain the right to disappear. Remaining in place, nesting, it set off fears that somebody would yank me away. To counter it, I had to flee. I had to reassure myself that I still knew how to escape. My body itself remained alien, a burden. I'd had to carry this thing around with me, this body with its dark skin, unruly hair, and narrow feet. This body with its liabilities, this body that had been vandalized, stolen. This was the hardest thing in the world, to remember the ravagement and still believe my body was magic, to remember the shattering and still believe my body was spectacular, holy, and capable of creation.
There are moments for which I still have no vocabulary. My mind bounces from the terror and havoc into colors. I say, it was blue, it was green. The memory makes me want to burn everything, raise the whole galaxy, and my brain won't hold the plot, but I have to keep trying. We have to keep trying. I have to find a way to tell you, this happened. Men came, seeking to destroy my body and demolish my future, but I cannot be ruined.
Rape is the story of women and war, girls and war, hundreds of thousands of mothers, daughters, sisters, grandmothers, cousins, and aunts in my country alone, hundreds of millions across the world. So many men were murdered in the massacre. So many women later died of HIV. Rape, ruin, corporal, psychological, social, lingered in even the most polished, sophisticated private spaces decades after the war. Night is not a woman's story. Rwandans believe we're comfortable with silence, but silence accommodates hate.
I try to put myself back together so that I don't fear men or need them to protect me, so I can reclaim my power. These days, I read Audre Lorde,
which is the person who the text started with. If you guys remember the question that she started the book with, that's who she's referencing.
These days, I read Audre Lorde. She is my light. Quote, we have been taught that silence would save us, but it won't. I feel, therefore I can be free. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. Any man I invite into my heart and my life needs to understand the magnitude of emotion inside a woman who has gone through war.
When Ryan first told me that he loved me, I was harsh. I said, excuse me, what does that even mean? I love you. Really, what does that mean? I thought at the time that he was imposing his will. I thought at the time that his remark was selfish. Well, if that's the story that you're going to tell yourself, that you love me, I guess you love me, I said.
Ryan was so patient, so kind, so white and jockey, so detached from my whole African genocide survivor girl drama, which was probably the point. His mother had programmed him to be a good Catholic. He played roller hockey. He drove for Uber and Lyft. He sat on the couch in our shared apartment all day on Sunday and watched football or basketball or baseball or movies. He ate chips. I was constantly taking notes. We spent, go ahead.
No, you go.
We spent 5 years together, Ryan and I. He protected me, adored me, tolerated me. I had lots of rules. He could not call me cupcake, sugar, or any food name. He could not describe me as bossy, sassy, bitchy, or anything negative.
I needed him. I truly did. Friends asked me to join them at Burning Man. That's a festival in California. I went. Ryan stayed home. Immediately, I realized I'd set myself up. This is where people went to experience ecstasy, but also to get closer to suffering, elective luxury suffering. The desert was hot and dusty, filled with tents. The first morning I woke up and said, "What have I done? Where's the food?" I felt cold. I left my blue blanket at home. That day and night, I wore costumes. I drank, danced, looked at art. I became disoriented. Time and space became kaleidoscopic, colors spinning, no fixed base. I wanted to return to my tent, so I pulled my bewildering map. The camp was laid out like a clock. Nothing made sense. The journey back to the tent took hours, days, maybe years. I finally did make it to our camp, and the next morning I woke up and said to myself, okay, another day to survive.
My friends had already left for their day's adventures. I was all alone. I started to cry, and I picked up my phone and stared at pictures of Claire's kids. I have a family, I said to myself. I am okay. I have a life somewhere beyond here. I pulled on clothes and walked outside, and the wind and the heat smacked me like an open palm to the face. I felt dehydrated and confused. I saw a woman I recognized from the day before. She was doing yoga. She looked very happy and relaxed. I was too nervous to approach her and say, I need help. So I stared at the kids on my phone again and then started crying. I don't want to be here anymore, I said to nobody in particular, but close enough to the woman so that she could hear. I want to be home. The woman paused her yoga and walked over and hugged me. She said, honey, you're home. You're fine.
Rwanda is so beautiful, but it is filled with too many people who believe they deserve only pain. I want to find another way. On my most recent trip there, I stayed with Uncle, a man who is not really my uncle, but who in many ways is my truest family. He lives in Kigali, a lovely home with a stately front porch on which he likes to take his breakfast of fruit and sweet tea. His neighborhood is filled with well-kept gardens and smooth paved streets that look like the Berkeley Hills. Above his dining table is a large framed wedding photograph. Uncle, handsome in his military uniform, holding the arm of his elegant third wife who just passed away. That photograph is so sad, and its presence gives me peace. I hardly left Uncle's house the 5 days I was in Kigali.
When I did, I mostly went to the Shokola Storytellers Cafe on the top floor of the public library. The space was deep inside my comfort zone, furnished with dark wood floors, jute rugs, and clean-lined modern chairs and couches. You could sit on the roof deck, look over the green hills, eat little elegant mandazi, and drink single-origin coffee topped with latte art. But driving through the city upset me. All the buildings from before, all the new construction. Near Uncle's house, on the hillside overlooking the farmland in Kigali's Central Valley, was a huge new development, hundreds of new apartments. The architecture self-hating, charmless, and cold. The buildings were sterile white. The plan was for them to stay that way. The design screamed out, "You who live here do not deserve beauty. We who designed this are stunted, locked in, and ashamed."
One afternoon while I was doing laundry, I lay on a blanket in Uncle's garden while my clothes dried on a line. The sun felt rejuvenating. Some ants worked on a ledge in the shade, dismantling a fallen mango. Nearby was a yellow spider. I felt at last, after all the hundreds of yoga classes I'd taken, like I'd finally exhaled. I was wearing a floral top, black with huge yellow and green flowers, and a bright yellow skirt. I stood out and I fit in, and I felt taken care of in a way that I felt taken care of nowhere else in the world. Yes, that was correct. It had been so long since I felt like that, a child like someone else's ward. Throughout Rwanda now, the last Saturday morning of the month is reserved for Umuganda. This is an official government program to get Rwandans to clean up and take care of their country, the physical space, yes, and the scars of the past. Everyone is to come out of their houses and join with their neighbors to tend to their communities, to clean the streets, paint the schools, whatever is necessary. Top of page 250.
It's a beautiful idea, a gorgeous device of repair. And still the wounds are there and the history oozes. Everybody did and saw horrible things. No one can remove that from their eyes. The preachers say Lot's wife, in the Bible, was turned into a pillar of salt for looking back on her wrecked city. The message in Rwanda, too, is forget, move on. But still the burnt ruins exist right there smoldering. On my most recent visit, the Umuganda project in Uncle's neighborhood was to clear an overgrown field. People showed up in sneakers and windbreakers smiling. They picked up and swung machetes, the tool all Rwandan families keep in their garages for gardening projects like this. Uncle didn't blink. His neighbors didn't blink. They'd grown accustomed to seeing machetes again. I had a hard time with Umuganda that morning. I could not bear the ghosts.
Later that day, a man named Vicky, who had lived in our neighborhood and had been a friend of Claire's nearly 24 years before, picked me up in his Toyota at Uncle's house. I said, "Let's go to the new Marriott." He shook off the idea. "Oh no, that's not a place where I go," he said. "That place is only for rich people. I can't go there." I knew the story in his mind. He didn't have the right shoes. He wouldn't fit in. He should stay in his lane. He didn't deserve nice things. "Well, today we're going to be rich," I said. "Let's go." He drove. We walked in. I ordered us tea. We logged into the Wi-Fi and hung out.
As we left, I asked Vicky, "How did that feel?" He said, "It felt so good." The night before I left Rwanda, Vicky picked me up again and drove me up a steep hillside. We stood on the side of the road overlooking Kigali. The sun set and it was beautiful. I knew this intellectually, even if I couldn't enjoy that beauty in my heart. The hills turned from green to blue to black, stacks and stacks of hills, a chain going on forever. Vicky pointed across the lowlands to a patch of blinking lights. He said, "That's where we used to live." I raised my phone and took pictures. Back in his car on our way home to Uncle's house, Vicky steered us as close to our old neighborhood as he thought I could handle. Down the busy street with men selling phone cards, the kids rolling bike tires with sticks, and the Muslim women wearing kittenjes as headscarves. The whole exuberant, multicultural mashup of the world I'd lived in before the universe fell apart. Vicky idled the car in front of a corner shop with no sign, ran in, and returned with a brown paper bag of warm chapati, the oil just starting to seep through. We ate and drove to the church where my parents got married. The chapati was so delicious, a sunrise, a warm bath in my mother's backyard garden, then being wrapped in Claire's perfect hand-me-down robe. The church looked the same.
A few months before that trip, on my 29th birthday, Ryan and I went for a walk in the Berkeley Hills on a trail that runs through my favorite park. We started to talk about getting married, but I could not live in that fairy tale. At the last page now. That storyline to me was about possession, to have and to hold until death do us part. Humans are not meant to be possessed. Ryan also loved me more than I loved myself, and I could not tolerate that. I pushed him away. I needed to learn to hold my own pain. I needed to figure out how to embrace my darkest corners. And when I returned from my trip to Rwanda, he was gone. We'd been coming unglued. My excavation of the past and my constant travel were not easy to live with, and now he'd taken everything. I had told him many times that being left was one of my deepest fears. I had always been so scared that Claire would leave me, that one day she'd just get up and hustle off if I wasn't good enough or fast enough, if I didn't follow the rules.
The first thing I noted, The first thing I noticed when I entered the apartment and set down my big black suitcase was that Ryan's guitar was gone. He kept it propped on a stand in the living room by the TV. The guitar wasn't there. The stand wasn't there. I walked into our bedroom. I noticed his phone charger. Good. Ryan needed his phone charger. He could not have left. But the door to our closet was wide open. Ryan's shirts were all missing. All my fears rushed into the room. Shit, shit, shit. The stealing, the faces, the water, the bodies, it all rushed in. I stood in my bedroom and tried to breathe. I reminded myself, I live here. I'm home. That's it, guys. Write your notes in the packet. That's all you have to do for today.
We're going to put a little like Google slide assignment that you can do for the end of this reflection. You can do it over the weekend, but you don't have to do it today if you don't want to, but there's nothing more that you have to physically write onto a Google Doc. We'll post the information for the Google Slides in a little bit. Bye, guys.